is Stronger Than My Father with Marcus Minis.
Welcome to another episode of Stronger Than My Father podcast. I am your host, Marcus Minis. The goal of this podcast is to address the issues positively or negatively about fatherhood and the issues that affect today's family. So I'm really excited for another episode so we can dive into the world of fatherhood. I always say fatherhood matters. So I also like to thank my producer of this podcast, Mr. Jim McCarthy, for all his work to help this podcast reach the nation. So today's episode is a slogan off my the name of Stronger Than My Father, which is breaking the cycle. So I'm really excited to have a good friend that I've met probably close to a year now. Mm-hmm. And we talked about when I produce a podcast, I wanted him on because his story was so amazing, dealing with fatherhood. I, as your host, I grew up with a great father who blessed me, protected me, and gave me every tool to be a successful father and husband. And now I want to use my platform to help others and bring more of a light to the issues that surround fatherhood. So my guest today is Mr. Robert Gauthier. I am thankful for you to come on this podcast, and I look forward to learning more about your story and diving into the world of fatherhood. So welcome.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's start out from the beginning. You grew up in Michigan. Mm-hmm. My wife is a fellow Michigan, so she would smile if she was here because she's from Michigan.
Okay.
From your bio, you moved here in 2012, and you are a married father with 3 kids.
Yes.
So for my listeners, let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Let's go back to you growing up in Michigan with your father, and let some of the listeners know some of the positive effect that your father had on your life.
Positive effects?
Positive and negative, both.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I was born, we'll start from the very beginning. My father was in the Marine Corps in Vietnam. I was born on a Marine Corps base in North Carolina called Camp Lejeune, 1970, a little time ago. And my parents didn't have a great relationship. They did initially, but my dad got out of the Marine Corps, moved back to Michigan, to our hometown, Royal Oak. It's about 2 miles north of Detroit, so a little blue-collar suburb. And since I was the firstborn, I had a brother and sister, 3 years younger than me. They were born back in Michigan, and at that time, the family kind of started to break apart. My dad was kind of abusive to my mother, and luckily, I didn't see a lot of that, and if I did, I don't remember it because I blocked it out as a kid. So that part was a blessing. They got divorced, and I'll fast forward to a lot of this because this could be a very long story if I told it all. But got divorced. My mom did the best she could to keep the family together. She ended up going through a nervous breakdown. Both of my siblings got put into foster home, which is tough. I stayed with my grandparents, and they just said that they couldn't keep us all together, right? So don't remember a lot of that, but there's bits and pieces of that. My mother ended up getting us back together. As a child, through that time, I didn't have my dad around. He was in and out. So looking back and talking to him, and by the way, I have a good relationship with him today.
That's good.
And that's something we'll talk about. But there were the times when Dad's supposed to be here, Dad doesn't show up. Mm-hmm. So I remember waiting with my bag of, a lot of times, mostly it was a garbage bag, a little black garbage bag. That's where we kept our clothes. We didn't have backpacks or anything like that back then. But he just wouldn't show, and it got to the point to where I didn't understand it. And I don't know the effect that it had to me then, other than it hurt, excited to see my dad. But he wasn't really in the picture that much. It was just single mom. So I don't know. I know today what the effect is, looking back. However, it was tough. And I really realized it when we went to school, not having somebody to give you direction, build your confidence up. There's a lot of bullying going on back when I was growing up, and there still is. Hopefully not as much today, but it was tough, man. And just single mother trying to do the best she could.
Well, one thing I don't know, and I'm glad you're telling this story, and I know it's emotional. I don't know on that side of emotions, but when you talk about fatherhood and you have to bring up old memories, that it can, be tough. That's why I'm hoping that this podcast will share more light to it. But one of my guests said empty promises. I've heard the story of packing up your bags and then your father doesn't show up. How did that affect you, kind of like moving on in life? Did that anger build up towards your dad for making empty promises? So then when you finally saw him, how did you use your emotions on that side?
Yes.
Because I know for me, I probably would lash out, but I want to hear your story.
So as I got older, the court battle stopped. My dad started to come around more. It was like a crapshoot. You didn't know if he was going to show or not. And so when he did, as I got into my teen years, we would go over to his house, maybe stay a night. And but when I got into, I would say, maybe 15, there was a lot of bullying. I was a very angry kid, and he wasn't there to give me any kind of direction or guidance. It was, my mom did the best she could. I left to go to school. Half the time I didn't go to school. I was afraid I was going to get my butt kicked by a couple of different guys who were always looking for me. You see it on the movies today. Well, that's real. I mean, that happens every day to kids, and people don't talk about it. I was deathly afraid. I would take different routes to school, different routes home to avoid getting my ass kicked. Yeah. Right? And it was very real for me. I was a little kid until I turned about 16, and I realized I needed to start to defend myself. And very angry at him. So him and I think when I got to be 17, I had moved out of my mother's house at that time. I was always hustling to make money because we grew up as poor as we did. I didn't want to be without. I had a paper route, second job after the paper route when I was a kid. But when I actually moved in with my father for a short time prior to moving out of my mother's house because I just wanted out. I was sick of that. And my dad and I got into a fist fight. And, at that time I had started in the martial arts back way before MMA. I wanted to learn to defend myself. So at 15, 16, I got my car, borrowed a car to go, and I taught myself how to fight. And I wanted to beat my dad's ass. Wow. That's how bad it got.
And I didn't understand. I want to finish that. I think that, one of my prior guests had that strong emotion side. And there's a side I don't know. Yeah. Because of my relationship, I was too scared to go up against my dad. Yeah. But I understand. I was
afraid too.
Yeah, but I want to learn more, like the emotional side, and then as things got better, if it got better with your father, did he give you any tools to help you at your age where you're at now? So those two questions I really want to know.
Yeah. So we went through our spats. He's a big man. He's 6'4", 240 pounds at the time. So I was 6 foot, 190, but pure anger, right? So I didn't care how big he was at the time, but we went through our fight, and it wasn't bad. It was what it was, right? And then he kicked me out. I moved out, and I swore I'd never see him again. And I guess one of the things I always looked to him for, he was very successful, right, in business, and he was in sales, which I'm in sales, right? So I was always looking for him to direct me as to what would I be good at? What would I, could you help me get a good job? And just because I didn't have that, right? I wanted something from him, and I knew he was successful. I knew he could at least get me that. The love and the closeness, none of that was there, right? It was a hug when we did see each other, when we saw each other. But he ended up helping me. When I was 18, he got me a job for a company that I was a draftsman's apprentice for Buick, Oldsmobile, and Cadillac. I was in a shop where they designed cars, and he, through his connections in the auto industry, got me in there, and I was thankful for that. And that's when we started to mend our relationship. But that rocky road took many turns over the years to where we are today. But that's one of the things I remember where he actually stood up and said, you know, I want my son to have a better life. So I knew deep down inside he had that love, that he wanted to help me. I didn't realize what had happened when I was a young kid to make all those tough decisions he had made happen. And I found that out later in life. But that is one way he helped me. And I always respect him for that. He's an excellent businessman.
Well, let me ask you this before we go into your later years, marriage and life and your kids. Did your father ever say he was sorry for the things he did and the mistakes he made? I know some men have that tough exterior where they don't want to say, I'm sorry. But did your father just sit down with you and say, you know what, I made a lot of mistakes. I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, he did. On several occasions. I think, excuse me.
No, it's okay, man. This is serious. This is serious, man.
Maybe about 6 months ago, he did again, because he's still hurt. So,
and that's one thing I know. Sometimes with men, it's hard to say no. Go ahead, to say they're sorry for the effects they did to their kids. Like I said, I've never had to experience it, but I did apologize to my father because I was doing them teen years. I was bad. I made a lot of mistakes. But when I became a father, I understood why my dad worked us so much, cutting grass and cutting the back. People don't believe I cut the back, but I did. But I didn't know why my father did those things.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was doing that to keep me and my brothers off the streets. I didn't know he was doing that for us to spend time with our father. I just thought my dad was mean and he just wanted to work us to death. But God put on my heart, probably a couple years after my oldest son, Marcus Jr., was born. And I went to my father. He was cutting grass one day. And I said, I need to talk to you. And I said that I want to apologize for being a knucklehead son to you. I didn't know why you was doing all these things as a dad to protect me and give me the tools I need to be a successful father and husband. And I broke down. And I told him, he said, one thing he told me, he said, I knew one day you would figure it out. That's what he told me. He said, one day I knew when you became a dad, you would figure out why I did so much for you. And I have a real close relationship with my father. If he called me today and said, we got to go cut grass, I'll stop. I'm going to be with my dad because at my dad's age now, I want to soak up everything from him before he leaves this earth.
Yeah.
And one thing he said in 2005, and I want to dive into the rest of your story, is we was at a marriage retreat, and my father doesn't talk much. He's very quiet. And he said that if I leave this earth tomorrow, I know my boys can make it. I've taught them everything I know for survival. And I think every father should teach their son that. Now the reverse is role for me.
Yeah.
I have 2 boys, and I ask God, please allow me to live long enough to give my boys all the tools they need for success. So when I pass away, I hope they can survive. Yeah. So that's my story, because it's always a balance. But let's dive into marriage and to raising kids. and some of the positive and negative effects of things you learned and how you was able to pass them on to your children, And so let's do a little diving. So you're married with 3 kids. I know you told me in the past that, you remarried and you moved to Tennessee in 2012. So let's dive in a little to that story, why it happened, what you want to discuss, and how has this move affected your children, and do you see them repeating your cycle positively, or are you worried as a dad they could possibly repeat your cycle negatively?
Great question. So we talked about me kind of connecting with my dad when I was 17, 18. I met my first wife. I got married in 1996. Okay. And was head over heels in love. Met her, I was 19 and got married, had my first son when I was 30. And then my daughter was born 4 years later. They're now 21 and 17. So we were young. I didn't have a good role model. Okay. I had my mother, who, again, did the best she could. And my dad did the best he could with what he was taught. And so I was winging it. I knew how to work hard. That's something that I have no idea where that came from other than from growing up poor. I knew I didn't want to be poor. So I worked a lot. We partied a lot as youngsters. I spent money I didn't have. I lived high on the hog. I was all about buying things because I never had nice things. Okay. And it was something I rewarded myself with. I worked hard. We were terrible with money. And I thought working harder, bringing in more money would be the best way to be a good father. I didn't realize, because I didn't have that deep emotional connection with my father, what it meant to be a true father. I know those things today, which I'll explain later. But so I was gone a lot. I worked. I always seemed to have a second job. And I wasn't the best husband. I was initially, but when my kids were born, we grew apart. And a lot of that was from me. I was entertaining. I was a bad husband. But I didn't know I was a bad husband at the time. I thought I was doing the right thing. Yeah. Because no one was teaching me the right thing to do or taught me. I wasn't. I always loved my kids. I was close with them, but my wife at the time, she did all the work for the most part, and I would, come in. I could have spent more time with them. Is what I regret, and I didn't see divorce on the horizon, but it happened, and it was rightfully warranted by my ex-wife, because she needed to get out and to have a healthier relationship, and my kids, it broke me up. So we ended up going through divorce. About a year later, she hands me papers and says, "I'm moving the kids to Tennessee. I want you to sign this." Wow. And I had already went through kind of a somewhat of a nervous breakdown. I was drinking a lot. I couldn't handle losing my family. I didn't know why it happened. And it was a cycle that happened with my father. That's why it said I want to break the cycle. Exactly. But it was happening, and I was dumbfounded as to why it was happening. So we got divorced. I ended up running out of money. I couldn't pay for an attorney anymore. My father at the time stepped up and he helped me. That was one of the times he kind of peeked into my life. Thank you, God. Thank you, Dad. But I was my 30s at that time. I had to sign my kids away. Wow. That was the hardest day of my life.
Wow. That had to be tough, because I'm very close to my boys. Yeah. My boys, and my goal is to live my life the best way I can, so I don't lose my boys. Yeah. Because I love my wife. People always think that I love my kids more than my wife, but my boys is my legacy. And and I couldn't imagine me not waking up and I don't see my boys.
Yeah.
That would break me. I'm not going to get, it'll break me because of the relationship I had with my father.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to do that with my boys. So I got to do right.
Yep.
But I think that it's very good for a man to tell that story, because there could be somebody listening that needs to hear that, to say, hey, you need to step up or you will lose, your children.
Absolutely.
And I think, it takes a man to say that. So I really appreciate that. So how now, you had the divorce. How did that, number one, affect your kids? Because I don't know what that is. My parents been married almost 51 years.
Sure.
So how does it affect them? And then how was your relationship with them through the divorce? How did it affect them? And how were y'all able to continue to still keep a father and son and daughter relationship?
Yeah. Another good question. I
have a lot.
So divorce happened. Everything seemed so surreal. I couldn't believe it was happening to me. But I had brought on probably most of it, right? By my actions. And, but so I had to deal with it, and I didn't know how to deal with it. Like I said, I started drinking. I had some money that I had made. I was flipping houses at the time. After I got divorced, I got into a deal where I could make some money. And so I didn't work for probably just over a year, and I was deep in depression, and because I didn't know what to do. Over that course of the year, my house went into foreclosure, my rental went into foreclosure. I had a lot of different things happening. My dominoes just kept falling. I didn't think it could get any worse. So in that time, the kids had moved. I got a couple of houses in foreclosure. I'm out of money at that time, but I was still, my ex-wife, thank God, was still wanting me to see the kids. That's good. So thank you for that. So I did whatever I could, and my parents helped. So they moved into Nashville, and I said, well, we got to figure out a way to do this. So we would meet in Cincinnati. I said, just so I need some sort of relationship. And sometimes it would be months without seeing them, and it was it just ripped me apart, right? So I kept that relationship up. They were 2 and 6 when this happened, 3 and 7, 4 and 8, and it took about 3 years for me to actually get to Nashville. But the day that I had to sign those papers, I knew in my heart I was moving. I was going to move to Nashville, but I had no idea how, right? I knew I needed to get to be with my kids, and it took me, I think, 3 years to do it. But in that time frame, I would get them for a month during the summer. I would drive down to Nashville. I'd stay at my favorite La Quinta on 65. It had a hot tub and a swimming pool, and I still have videos of them when they were little. So I would go down there and just spend as much time as I could with the money I had. And that, to me, was the best I could do in the situation given. We have a great relationship. We had that great relationship. I don't know to what level it's affected them. I know that I wish I would have been there to, wake them up every morning, get them off to school. Talk about your day. Tell me what happened. I missed all that. Right? Because I became a weekend father, which I'm glad I was still able to be a father. But I wanted to be an everyday father, which I didn't get that chance again, right? I kind of pissed that away. So, but we have a great relationship. I ended up figuring out a way. I got a job, a good job in Nashville or in Brentwood, moved down here and made sure I got a 3-bedroom place so I could get my kids, and I got them on my days off. I did everything I could that I knew in my power just to spend time with them. And that's how I functioned for years, but we have great memories,
Mm-hmm.
right? I didn't want them to deal with what I dealt with as a kid. So every time I looked at them, I was always there for them, no matter what. I just regret I wasn't able to be there every day for them. That's what I missed. I would lay in bed and wonder what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, what's
Yeah.
going on with it? What are they thinking? So I didn't have that closeness, right? We do today. I think they can come to me with anything.
Yeah.
And they know that. But it was tough. And it's still tough, but thankful they love me. I love
Yeah.
them, and they're always over my house, which I love. So thank you for that, God.
I think one thing is it's good that you still fought through all your adversity. You still fought for your kids, because there's so many men would have just said, forget it. You deal with it, and they abandon the kids. And I think that your relationship now is because you fought then. And I think I'm very honored to know that you fought for them, because there's so many that don't. There's so many young men, so many young girls that don't have a relationship with their father.
Yeah.
Because the father just abandoned.
Yep.
But I think that, if I'm right, your relationship with your father changed your life to say, I want my kids not to have to go through a lot of hurt that I went through.
Yes.
And I think that's great. I think that's great. And I think that, your kids going to always remember that. So as we begin to wrap up this podcast, still got some more time, and I want to learn a little bit more. You have a great question you put down here. You put, did your experience as a child help you, or did it hinder you from being a better father? And I think you've talked about some of that.
Yeah.
But did you have any hindrance? That's a good question. That's a good point to kind of dive into real quick. What hindrance did you have being a father? Well, all this transition you was doing, that's what I'm trying to get to. All the transition that you was doing to see your kids, was there a time that you was like, you know what, I'm not going to do this no more?
There were a few times I didn't know if I had it in me to fight. But I would wake up the next day and be like, no, I got to fight. I'm a fighter. Yeah, that's what's in my heart. So what's in my soul. And I know what I lacked as a kid. So I was going to fight for them.
Yeah.
So whatever I could do, I did the best of my ability.
And I think that, through your story and through your kid's life, I think you can see that. And, hopefully this will help more fathers make better decisions, and not bashing none of yours, just making great decisions, because I've learned that your decisions affect your kids.
Yeah.
All my decisions, everything I do as a father, as a dad, how I treat my wife, my kids are watching every move I make.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it till my wife kind of brought it to my attention. I think last summer, my oldest son, every time you seen my son when we went networking, my oldest son wanted to be with me.
Yeah. That was great.
And
I love seeing that.
And one day I was impatient. I'm like, I got to go. I can't wait on him. And I left. And when I got home, my wife said, I need to talk to you privately. She said, your son went in his room and cried because you left him.
Yep.
And I vowed to myself that I'll never leave my child if he wants to go with dad, if he can. And I made another mistake last week. I can admit through this podcast. My youngest son, I gambled on what time to pick him up from school. I said it's raining, the cars probably be packed. I can get there about 3:15. The cars will still be there. I get there at 3:15 on the dot. All the cars are gone. Yeah. And my son comes out with the most scaredest face, and he got in the car and just would not stop crying. He said, and I may need to clean that for this one. He said, Daddy, I thought you left me.
Yeah. That's rough.
And I'm sitting in the car like, I was thinking about my business and everything I do, and I couldn't get to my son's school on time because I thought it was going to be a long line. And I vowed to myself that I would never let that happen to my son again.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that face again, because I want my son to say Daddy was there. Daddy makes mistakes, and I'm not perfect. I could have been, running late, traffic, whatever. But my son don't know that.
Right.
And I think that we as fathers just have to be there for them through these young years because they can remember everything.
Yeah.
My kids can remember, even my oldest son, he can remember everything. Every move I make, he's mimicking me.
Yeah.
And over again. So my prayer every day is, Lord, help me make great decisions that my son, it doesn't damage him for life.
Yeah.
And through your story, you can see the good, the bad, and the ugly through your life. And I'm just so glad that you took the time to tell your story because some men don't want to tell that. They want to tell, hey, I wasn't the best father. I'm not saying you, but I wasn't the best husband. And because of my mistakes, it cost me my kids for a brief period of time. Yeah. And I'm just really glad that you was able to tell that story. So one thing I do at the end of each podcast, if a father was listening to this podcast and he was struggling being a dad, what would be your best advice to that father right now that can help him become a better father?
Fight for your kids.
I like that.
Yeah, fight, never quit.
And that's what I do. Fight for your kids.
So I had a very blessed opportunity to get remarried.
Okay.
I have another child.
Congratulations.
She's 3.5.
Yeah.
And all the kids, the younger or the older kids come over and play with Isabella. It's Eric, Megan, Isabella. So to come full circle, to have all the stuff that I went through, to know how to actually do it right and to have a chance to do it again. I still take that time with my older kids, my first, second born, but to be able to do it again is such a blessing and learn from my mistakes. Man, it's awesome. I'm digging it. But fight for your kids. You don't know what it does to them when you quit fighting. Even if your ex-spouse is in the way, which is kind of what happened in my childhood growing up. There was a lot of that back and forth. Just continue to fight. Pray, fight, never quit, because your kids will remember. I guarantee it.
Well, your story has amazed me, and I'm just glad you took time out of your schedule to help me become a better father.
Yeah, man.
And to keep fighting for my kids. I'm not going to do no divorce or anything, but I still have to fight for my kids. My oldest is a teenager. He got to begin to deal with bullying and stuff like that, and I want to be sure I'm there to help him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And teach him what he needs to do. Because you know what? My father was there for me. When I was bullied in school, he told me what to do. Yep. Some of it, you need to fight, so you need to be tough. You need to get tough. Yep. But he also taught me how to laugh at a bully. He said, if you laugh at a bully and don't get mad, they'll go away. So he taught me those things that helped me when I was in high school when people wanted to bully me as well. So Mr. Robert Gauthier, thank you so much for joining me on Strong in My Father podcast, breaking the cycle.
Yes,
and I believe you broke it. I believe your kids is going to be blessed through you, and we got to do this again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much for viewing another podcast. You can view all our podcasts on strongerthanmyfather.org. Please subscribe to our YouTube page for all our videos, past podcasts, and also continue to support us through our social media. And if you want to be a guest on Strong in My Father podcast, please reach out to me at marcus@strongerthanmyfather.org. Love you as a guest. And let's continue to dive into the world of podcasting. Then to my producer, Mr. Jim McCarthy, thanks for producing another great podcast. God bless you, and see you next time.